Hello, this is Abram. This is the Success Podcast where you're going to learn everything to be successful financially, physically, mentally, emotionally. And my guest today is Chez, the COO of the Wisconsin Athletic Club. I'm assuming you still are, right? Still the
Yes,
COO?
I still am.
And one of the owners. And he is someone that worked his way up through the company. And his story is absolutely phenomenal. And right off the bat, I would like to start out with, could you tell us a little bit about you and how your journey into owning, being one of the owners of the largest privately held athletic clubs in Wisconsin, which is just phenomenal for me to even say out loud. But you tell me, how did you start and how did you get to where you are today?
Sure. Well, first off, Abram, thanks for having me on here, and I appreciate you reaching out and connecting up to do this. Number two, I guess, to answer your question specifically is, I started out teaching martial arts here at the Wisconsin Athletic Club 30 years ago. So that was my first job here, was teaching for our kids' summer adventure program. And the story goes, and it's not a story, it's the real life story, I guess, is that my mom drove me to the interview because I was 15 years old when I started here. So, again, teaching martial arts was the first thing that got me exposure to WAC. And at the time I was obviously in high school, and I just started working other areas of the club. So I would work the front desk. I would teach swim lessons. I would help out in maintenance and anything, I think, and everything that you can do within our company, at least at the times that I'm referencing, I probably did at some point. And it just kind of evolved as a process. So it wasn't kind of what I was really working towards. I just kind of kept doing things and kept finding things that I liked doing. And one of the things that I guess I'll talk maybe a little bit more in detail on is kind of my own personal philosophy on anything that you do as a person. I always try to do it the best I can, I guess. And so it didn't matter if I was teaching martial arts or if I was at the front desk. I always wanted to be the best person at working the front desk. And to me, I always would look at that and say, like, what would the best front desk person act like? What would they say? What would they do? How would they hold themselves? How would they dress? Whatever. And then I would try to be that. And that was really helpful for me because I learned how to be the best martial arts, maybe instructor, learned how to be the best at the front desk and then other areas. And then when it became able to get some type of manager responsibilities, I could apply that same philosophy to that role. And at that point, I already trained myself on how to hold myself accountable to being the best that I thought I could, right? And when I say that, I don't mean I was better than somebody else. It was just that I was trying to be the best that I could be at doing that. And I think that's super important because sometimes we focus so much on comparing ourselves to other people, right? What's most important is comparing yourself to yourself, how you were yesterday. And so I always tried to be better than I was at whatever that position was today than I was yesterday. And I think that's super important. And what led to me getting opportunities to get the next step. And I think that's kind of a challenge right now because everybody wants personal development, right? And they're all like growth. I want the next step. But one of the things that's so important is that you have to be good where you're at now before you're ready to go to the next step. And I think that I struggle with a lot of people because they want to be the fitness manager, but they're not yet where they need to be as a personal trainer. And growth is important, but part of your growth process is learning how to be good at what you do so that you can be good at what you're doing next. And I think people sometimes feel that it's more about what's next that's more important than what they're currently doing, and that's why they end up not ending up in that position because they're focused on where they're going, not what they're doing. And in order to get where you want to go, you have to do a good job at your current position. And that's, to me, has been kind of why I've ended up, I think, in a successful spot, is because I did a really good job at whatever my position was at the time. And I never had to ask for the next step. It came to me because people knew that I could do it and they felt comfortable and confident in my ability. So I think it's a little different, but that, long story short, again, from 80 million little positions to manager positions, I have a whole drawer full of business cards from the Wisconsin Athletic Club, or even before the Wisconsin Athletic Club, when we were called the West Dallas Athletic Club, because that's what it was called when I started. I have all business cards with different titles, and I was the front desk manager, and then the fitness manager, and then the actually my first manager job was weekend manager, weekend manager, and then again went from fitness manager to then what we called operations manager, to GM, to overseeing all the GMs. I was the corporate director of operations, vice president of operations, and then the chief operating officer. And then as we were growing as a business, I was able to get involved as an ownership position. So I guess that's, again, a long story of how that all happened, and the overnight success story that took 30 years to happen. Right? So.
Well, the thing is, it's not like you're an old guy. Like you've done this in such a short period of time. And just so people knew, I used to work at the Wisconsin Athletic Club 4 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 3 years ago. I don't know. It was a while ago. It was whenever the pandemic happened, but it was the longest held job I've ever had in my life. I don't even know if you know this, but I have never worked any job. And I would literally quit for two reasons. One, there's no opportunity for growth, and I would get bored. Or two, the management just sucked ass. And I was like, I cannot handle like these people that are just like it's one thing to be incompetent. It's another thing to be incompetent and then like refuse to have any type of growth with your employees. When I worked at the Wisconsin Athletic Club, it was so clear the path to growth and exactly what I need to do. And the fact that everyone was so open and the culture was so stellar. And this is something that you talked about when we met like years ago, is that there's like two things that help like the company grow. One is the top line. Obviously, you always want to grow the top line, but also people. How did you end up with a company where you have this phenomenal company culture? That's the thing I personally want to know.
Yeah, it's company culture is something that you have to really spend a lot of time, energy, and effort on. And a lot of companies don't. The company culture is a byproduct of just who the owners are, or just the personalities that maybe people have. And I think that, that is organically how cultures, occur. But we really try to spend a lot of time on looking at everything that we do and make sure that it fits within our culture that we'd like to see created as a company. And again, I think a lot of companies don't do that. And something that's super important for us is congruency. So what we say and what we do has to be the same. And so if we say that our people are important to us, then the things that we do with our people should reinforce that. And I think a lot of companies don't do that. They say one thing and then they do another thing. And I think that's really something that is important as a business owner. You have to make 1,000 decisions, almost every single day or every single week, depending on where you're at from a startup standpoint to an existing business, to how much control you have as an owner on a day-to-day standpoint. But it's every one of those decisions helps you build or detract from the culture that you want to create. And you have to be cognizant of that. Mm-hmm. And you also have to stand and say, here's what we are going to do because of here's how it connects to that. And so you're at WAC, so like even little things like, let's start our meetings with WAC moments. And why do you do that? And we do that because it goes back to catching people doing something right. And we want to start our meeting with us catching people doing something right, because how are most meetings? Most meetings are telling people what they're not doing right, Mm-hmm. And so we want to do the opposite of that. We want to make sure that people feel good coming into the meeting. We have better discussions. We have better conversations about what we're doing, where we're going, where we're headed. In that meeting, because the way we start is a positive versus it starting out on a negative. And so everything we do, we kind of comes back to that culture, comes back to that philosophy that we have. And we try to make sure that we're continuously connecting those dots together with everything that we do. And, mm-hmm. and it's really hard though. I mean, because all of a sudden one day you don't do something like that. It does tend to deter people from thinking that's truly what you believe. So you really have to pay attention to it. And you have to have a multi-layer approach in there. It can't just be, this is what you do, on this day. It's got to be every day, all day, right? You got to have a certain level of accountability over time that your philosophy is being lived, not just being talked about.
Yeah.
And I
And
think that's what,
yeah, with that being said, that harps back to my experience inside of the WAC. In the WAC, we're shortening this. This stands for Wisconsin Athletic Club, just so everyone knows, because I know that we aren't all inside here. But I didn't even realize this till just now, but I just read this book. It's called The Gap in the Game. It's actually right here. It's from an author, Dan Sullivan. He's the founder of Strategic Coach, and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. He wrote it. He kind of wrote it for him. But he talks about how the most successful companies, what they do, and most successful people, what they do is they actually live in the gain, the accomplishments of what they've accomplished compared to their previous self, which is exactly what you're talking about. So have you had this type of mindset for growth, like as long as you can remember, or is this like instilled in you? Did you learn this? This is just like blowing my mind right now that you've had this, since you were, you worked your whole way up here,
so, from a philosophical standpoint, most of the things that I believe or that I feel that I am as a person, I attribute back to my training in martial arts. So I mentioned to you my first job here at WAC was teaching martial arts. And so most people now at WAC probably don't even know that I ever did martial arts. But for the first 40 years of my life, martial arts was a really big part of it. And I mean, I used to travel and fight all over the US and, when I was a kid growing up, from the time I was 6 years old, I used to travel every weekend and do martial arts seminars, and just really it was my passion. And I mean, I would go 4 hours a day for, classes and still want to do more. And it was just something that I just was really engaged into, and just really loved it and felt, and I learned so many life lessons through martial arts that I think that's really what's helped formalize my process of how I look at my life, which then also formulates my process of how I look at how we operate our business to some extent. But one of the key things that to me that's really important is, and I've said this a lot, is it's just something that's been told for me, for my martial arts instructor, is just never being content to remain at the level that you've already achieved. And martial arts is really relatively easy to do that because you start out as a white belt, right? And then you go to your next belt, which is like a yellow belt, right? And then you go to your next belt, and you always have a goal, right? There's always a next level that you're working towards as part of that. The challenge for a lot of people is that in life, there's not such a clear structure, right? There's not a clear, like, what's your next belt, Abram? I mean, where exactly are you headed, right? I mean, those are things that are challenging for a lot of people, especially now during a pandemic and during all those things. And so what I've learned through martial arts is you have to pick your goal. You have to set these expectations for yourself, and then you work towards them. You can always change it. You can always move through something different, but you have to be working towards something. You have to be growing. You have to be improving. If you're not doing that, the alternative is that if you're not improving, then you're obviously you're going to see yourself starting to step back, right? It's like exercise. You're either getting faster or you're slower. There is no maintaining, of that. As a business, you're either getting bigger or you're getting smaller. You're either getting faster, or you're getting slower. I mean, all those things correlate life, they correlate business. And so it's really important to try to tie all that together. But I would attribute, kind of a lot of our philosophy, or at least things that I've tried to pull into WAC. And again, when I say this, I mean, I've had great business partners and a lot of great team members. This is not just my philosophy here at WAC's philosophy. We've had hundreds and hundreds of amazing team members that have worked at WAC to create the culture and the philosophy and all the things that are there. But a lot of it, at least from my standpoint, and things that I think I've brought to WAC have stemmed from my experiences in martial arts. And I mentioned the one, but there's so many others that it's been such a great learning experience for me. And even just going back to my own personal success. I mean, I started teaching martial arts when I was 11 years old, and the ability to communicate, the ability to stand in front of a group of people and lead them, whether it's through, exercises, forms, sparring sessions, whatever it is that you're doing. I had so many reps of doing things that a lot of people don't get a chance to do until they're 25 or 30 years old, right? I mean, what's the first time, you got in front of a whole group of people and started teaching them. I mean, maybe it was 11. I don't know. Everyone's different, but I was teaching 3-4 classes a week at 11 years old. So I was used to walking into a room. I was used to leading. I was used to making decisions. I was used to coming up with what the lesson plan is and doing that. And that was really helpful for me because it taught me how to lead. It taught me how to come up with my own thought process. It was really helpful on some of the skills that I think are most important to be successful in managing other people. And it gave me, again, a lot of reps, and it was okay when I was 12 years old. If I didn't do it perfectly right, nobody really thought, hey, wow, this 12-year-old kid's screwing up, right? They were still probably happy that I was there to teach their kids or whoever I was teaching at the time. And so, again, there was a lot of positivity that came out of that. And it's, to me, it's just like martial arts. What you practice is what you improve on. And so I was able to practice a lot of really important leadership and skills that most people don't get to practice at a much earlier age, which I think has given me the advantage in a lot of ways. So,
yeah. And one of the things that, because you've had a lot of, like someone just looked out and then saw at where you're at today, you can see the level, like there's been lots of successes along the way. And one of the things that I struggle with personally is that acknowledgement of like, once you go up higher in a company, I feel like there's less and less people that are just being like, great job, because it's like, there's less people to tell you that, it's not like all the people under you aren't going to like throw you parties every day, every time you hit a goal or whatever it might be. I know inside the WAC, you guys, oh, wait, look at this. You guys this is my 2017 Wacky Award for most committed to learning, applying, and sharing knowledge. So this is something I got. It was probably one of my, whatever year I was at the WAC, but you guys do a great job of acknowledging people. At least I feel like it is, having worked in corporate jobs where it's just like absolutely toxic. You guys do a really good job of that in your company. But my question is, what do you do for yourself in order to celebrate wins? Like because in martial arts, you get to another belt and it's great. Eventually you're at black belt. And you're still at black belt, unless you are one of the martial arts where they have like 2nd, 3rd, 15th degree black belt, there's not really another echelon unless you're doing competitions and things like that. So what do you do to celebrate your wins right now and acknowledge what you do?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's one that I'm going to throw back to a martial arts answer to some extent, but it's very similar in martial arts. In life, all this stuff correlates real simple. The higher you get, the less praise you get, the less recognition you get, and the more criticism that you do get, right? And that's just the reality of it, And I mentioned that as a white belt, if you screw up your form in front of people, they're like, oh, they're a white belt. If you did it as a black belt, there would be no forgiveness to that. You're like, well, you're a black belt? No, you're not. You don't know what you're doing, right? And so the higher you get, it's kind of like, I always think of a great analogy. It's kind of like climbing a mountain, right? The higher you get, the bigger the fall, right? So as you get up to be higher and higher and have more and more responsibilities, you have less people that are above you. There's less people that can give you that praise. There's less people that can do that. And going back to martial arts, as you become kind of, the lack of a better way to put this, the master, right? As you become higher than most of the other people that are ranked. So in martial arts, again, it's really simple. You line up by rank, right? Who's the highest rank? Here's where they stand. Here's everybody else below them, right? And so it's the same thing as a company to some extent. But the higher that you rank, there is less people that can give you feedback. And so what you have to really be good at is giving yourself feedback. And I think that goes back to the mindset I mentioned to you earlier, is that I was always really clear, like what the best pick the position again looks like, right? And so I even asked myself, was like, how if I, as an owner of this business, what should I do? How should I look? How should I feel? How do I grow it? all those questions I'm constantly asking myself, and I'm constantly giving myself that feedback. And you kind of you go again, I think part of, again, this is a martial arts analogy, is, you have to eventually go from being the student to the teacher. And part of what that is being able to teach yourself, coach yourself, motivate yourself, and manage yourself. And so all the lessons that you learn from getting all that feedback should help you develop that within yourself, to be able to manage your own thoughts, manage your own mindset, to be able to give yourself feedback that's meaningful. And the more success you have, the more you trust yourself because of that success, right? So you're going through that. So I think that's step one. Step two is also, you got to surround yourself with the right people. and sometimes we surround ourselves with the wrong people, and if they're negative, or if they're have the wrong attitude, it really just makes it harder for you to keep a positive attitude. And so I personally try to find good people that can give me honest feedback, but they also are positive people. It's not just negativity, like, hey, you could do this better, or this is something that's not there, as part of it. And then number three, I think, is you have to put yourself in situations where you're gathering a lot of information. And I try to get a lot of information on, no matter what we're doing as a company. I talk to members, I talk to staff, I talk to competitors, I talk to whoever, whatever. So I want to hear what they're saying, right? Because now it's not just my perspective of how I think we're doing something. It's how do they perceive it? How do they perceive it? And I can, again, take that information to help me continue to decide, am I moving in the right direction, or do I need to change something, or whatnot, as part of that.
Yeah. So who do you learn from now? I mean, like if you, I mean, obviously, as you're going up in a company, like you are like the quintessential entrepreneur. like you could not be a better definition of someone that is like doing entrepreneurial ventures inside of a company. So as you're working your way up, obviously you can learn from managers, you can learn from like other people that are in the company. But once you're at this level, who do you learn from now? Like, are you part of masterminds? Do you still read?
Well, the answer is that you learn from everybody. And I think that's the problem, is that people feel like when they get to a certain level that they can only have somebody above them teach them something. And the reality is, it's kind of like, as a black belt, you can learn from a yellow belt. It's not like they should be teaching the class the yellow belt, right? But the reality is that you can learn something from everybody as part of it, but you have to be open and receptive to doing so. And I think a lot of people aren't. A lot of people are like, I only will learn from somebody better than me, and I have to prove that they're better than me, right? And it's part of that. But I'm really lucky. I mean, I have really great business partners that have long standing careers themselves, and are great success stories themselves, and the standpoint of who they are and what they've accomplished. So that's extremely helpful. I'm part of a Rex Roundtable, which is I'm in a group of 18 other health club owners and operators that are around the entire world. So a couple of them are actually in South America, so it's a global kind of perspective, not just U.S. I'm involved. I'm a club solutions advisory board, so I'm involved with a lot of club solutions, which is, again, hundreds of club groups. I'm active in IRSA, which is the largest health club association in the world, and I've spoke there. I've connected with literally hundreds of club operators, owners, different positions in health clubs. So I really try to constantly be learning. And I think it's more important that you have the attitude of wanting to learn. As if you are, it's kind of like the old saying, right? Is if the student is ready, the master will appear, right? That concept of it. But you have to be ready. And most people aren't ready to do that. They think they know it all. And that's what you have to kind of change within yourself, is that no one knows it all. You have to be willing to continue to learn and grow and develop. That's where growth occurs, is by trying to be open and honest to do that. And what I focus in on is continuous improvement. You can't go from 50 to 100. You might have to go to 50 to 51, right? As a personal trainer, I think it's a perfect example is if your client wants to lose 100 pounds, you don't start with just 100 pounds. You say, how do we lose 1 pound this week? How do we lose 2 pounds? Let's move down the progress and improvement there. But that's, to me, I think what's so important is that, you just figure out little ways to do that. And then sometimes what you have to do is step back too, because when you're in it every single day, sometimes you really don't get a chance to appreciate all the things that you're doing and seeing and involved in. And so you sometimes have to step back a little bit so you can kind of see everything. And that way, when you do that, you can see and you can feel good, because sometimes you don't realize the progress and the change, right? I always think of like your kids. When you see them every day, you don't notice that they gained 6 inches, right, over the last 2 years. But and then somebody that hasn't saw them in 2 years, like, holy cow, you're big, right? You've done this or you've done that. And so, because we're in our lives every day, we don't always see the growth and the changes and the experiences. So you sometimes have to step back and really see how far you have come, and recognize that, and having an attitude of gratitude of just what you've seen and how you've grown and what you've developed, and recognize that within yourself is just helpful. And again, one of the most important things, whether it's leadership, life, whatever, is always having a positive attitude towards, what's happening. If you have that, you're able to see the good in so many more things than than not. So
Yeah. And with it's also like amazing, like the amount of things, like even when I say like, oh, are you doing anything for like continuous development, you rattle off like 15 things. Oh yeah, I'm part of this, I've done speaking on this, I'm part of this group, I'm part of that group, and things that you're continuous learning from like multiple people. It also seems like you have a very fast pace in life. Like you have this sense of urgency to get stuff done. That like you said, is not a common thing. And it was something that I internalized, and I know it's something that I've struggled with in the past, where it's a lot easier for me to work 16 hours a day than it is for me to take time off. And I know because I've done it. I've worked every day for 2 years straight, and that was easy. Like that wasn't something that was like, oh wow, I'm so hardcore, I'm doing this. It's something that felt more natural to me because I liked the pace that I was at, and I struggled with being able to like take time away from that. How do you control that type of balance that you want in life, where you want this increased pace where you can get all these things done and still like focus on yourself, your own health, your relationships, things like that?
yeah, it's all connected. I mean, a lot of times I think the current kind of trend is like work-life balance. Well, you have a life. And part of your life is work, part of it's family, part of it's all of those things. And so, and I'm sure not perfect. I mean, could I spend more time doing this, that, or whatever else? Everyone has that. But I think what's most important is taking a step back a little bit and really understanding what's important to you. And when I say this, every year I kind of sit down and I try to set goals for myself. Every year I put together a personal development plan for myself. I've done that now for like, I don't even know, 20 some years. And every year it's a little different. I'm one of those people that likes some flexibility, but I want some framework within that flexibility. I also get bored a little bit. So I like changing things up pretty regularly because that's just the way I operate. But it goes back to, I know how I operate. I know what I need to do in order to get things done. I understand. One of the best classes, I'm kind of jumping a little bit around here, but one of the best classes I took in college was learning how to learn. I figured out how I could learn really effectively. And that was awesome for me because it just helped me get through college a lot faster and do well. And I was able to apply that to, personal development. I was applying that to learning jobs, moving into other positions. And so but most people don't take the time to figure out themselves. Everything that you need is inside of you, inside of your head. It's just, we're always looking everywhere else other than where it is. It's kind of like your glasses are on your head, right? And you're looking for them everywhere else. We have to make sure we step inside and you hear of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What's on the top is self-actualization. That's really knowing yourself. I don't want to, my personality is not to come home at 5 o'clock and just sit around and watch TV from 5 till 9 and then go to bed. That's just not who I am. But just really knowing who you are, knowing what you like, knowing how you work, knowing what you need to do to structure yourself so you can get things done is so important. But so many other people put the onus on like their boss or on their company or on this, and how come they didn't do this for me, and how come that it's because of them. I just have never chose to give that up. I want control over my life. I want to be responsible for where I end up and what I do. And so therefore I decide what I want to do. I decide what makes me happy, and then I do it. It's really not that hard. Our life is complicated more by us overthinking things and by us trying to make it, just way more difficult than it needs to be, when it's really pretty simple, right? Do what you need to do and move on. We'll think about something for 24 hours when it took us 10 minutes to just get it done, right? Mm-hmm. And then we wonder why we don't have time for the things that we want to do, right? And again, you've heard this a million times as a trainer, that if exercise is important to you, find time to do it. Just do it, schedule it in. And I know that sounds like, well, you can't just do it. You can. you control your schedule. And then again, there's obviously cases where it's not at all altruistic. Every minute of every day you have that flexibility. I get that. But we all have the same amount of time in the day. It's just most of us choose to not use it very effectively. Yeah. And then we're upset at the fact that we've wasted a lot of time and we didn't get much done.
Yeah, you definitely have a high degree of like personal responsibility, like in what you've done. And that leads to success. It's not that like you got up into this position and you're like, no, I'm going to start taking responsibility for everything I've done. You've you've definitely had that every step of the way, which is why you've been able to develop and not just have weaknesses that just remain weaknesses, and you have strengths that you can strengthen over time. All of that being said, like time is an investment. And I noticed in my life, you don't actually have to spend more time to make more money. What do you do in terms of like taking time off? In terms of like, how do you know when is the right time to, because I know you've gone on trips. For a fact, you've gone on trips at some point. I know you don't work all day, every day for every, thing. You might be working out in like Barcelona or something, but how do you know when it's time to take some time off?
Well, every part of my life has been different. When I had kids that were really younger, I had a different lifestyle, right, of how I lived. And I'm at the point where my kids are out of the house already. So, I mean, I'm in a little different point, but to answer your question it's understanding how you use your time most effectively to some extent. And then also then overlaying with what do you want to do? And I think that's what's so important. And I'll give you an example. I think it was 2018, 19, one of those years, one of my personal development plan goals was I wanted to travel somewhere once a month. That's to me one of the things that I like doing is I like traveling. I like learning, and I like learning things, and part of my learning is going somewhere else, right? If I go to XYZ city that I've never been to before, I'm one of those weirdos that I'll go run around the city as for my workout, because I'm getting my workout in, plus I'm seeing all the stuff that's there. If I go somewhere, I like to go and stop at a whole mess of different places because I want to see what's all there. I don't want to just, sit in my hotel room and hang out, or just let's go to the beach. I don't mind a beach day or a beach couple days, but I like to explore. I like to see things. I like to learn things. I've gotten ideas for, things we've designed in our clubs from a hotel that we were in XYZ country, or from, this or that, but it comes back to designing the life that you want to live, and taking control of that. And so that's what I've always tried to do is at this point in time, here's what I want to do and here's how I want to make that happen. And I'm very in control of my schedule as part of making that happen. And then things to me that are most important are the things that I get done. I mean, every day, when do I work out? It's in the morning one day, the next day it's in the afternoon, but I'm going to work out today, right? So if that's important, you schedule it, right? And you have to be able to know that, that might mean that I have to work here an extra hour and a half because I put that hour in of workout in it from 1 to 2, but that's okay, as part of that. And I also have a lot of flexibility within that, but I have that because I've surrounded myself with the right people. I mean, I have a spouse that understands how I operate and knows that from the day one that we've met, that this is what works and how we work well together. And, I feel supported in that way, so if I'm not home at 7 o'clock at night, which I'm usually never home at 7 o'clock, I get home 8 to 9 to 10, depending on the day. Right. I mean, and this is how we operate. This is how we work well together and do all that. You have to create that. And what I'd say to most people is, they spend more time planning a week's vacation than they do planning their life. And then they wonder why they just haven't gotten what they want. And I've used a great quote that I heard that I've used a lot to kind of help with this is that people that ask themselves easy questions have a hard life. And those that ask themselves hard questions, have an easy one. Right. So are you asking yourself hard questions about like, what do I like? What do I want to do? How do I do this? Where do I go? Or are you just be like, hey, what's for dinner tonight? I mean, it's like, that's the reality for a lot of people. Or like, hey, when is Saturday going to be here? Because I can't wait for the weekend, right? I'm like, no, what am I doing right now to make myself better? What am I doing right now to grow our business? What am I doing right now to improve my relationship or to connect with my kids or whatever it might be, right? I mean, so it's seizing those moments and being in the present, and making things happen. Or not. I mean, those are choices that people have. But a lot of people wait until whatever life gives them, they just accept. And that's why I think they're miserable, because they're not exactly where they want to be. Right. And so.
Yeah, there's definitely a level of fulfillment there for sure. If you were to do that, and that's a Jersey Gregorick quote, the easy choices, hard life, hard choices, easy life. It's literally my wallpaper on my phone. I'm not even kidding.
There you go. Look at
So
that.
like none of that was planned. But it's like, it's quite literally, and I feel like that's so spot on. And the fact that you are prioritizing happiness is what leads to that high degree of productivity. So after I left the WAC, so I worked at the WAC for 3 or 4 years, or it was the longest job I've ever had in my life. I moved to a corporate job and I got to like 4th in the company. So I was freaking crushing it. I hated every day of my life. And like, that's not even an understatement. Like I went from like the happiest, like most positive, I love every second of every day, to this is just nothing but misery. And, I transitioned from that. Obviously, I don't work at that corporate job anymore. Now I'm doing podcasts at whatever time that works for Chez. And I'm, I have my own company now. And the reason I've been able to work so effectively in it is because I have that passion correlates perfectly with exactly what you're talking about, where you prioritize the happiness and you reverse engineer what actually works for you. And there are times when there's sprints. So like if I have to get X number of clients to be able to keep the lights on in my house or whatever, like it's just like, that's the goal. And then you reverse engineer from there. And then you do your sprint in order to make it happen. That doesn't mean that has to be there all the time. But one of the things that you said is that you wanted to take time off like every month. You can't do that unless you set up a business where you have that ability to have that freedom. So I've talked to other CEOs, owners of companies. They can't do that. They are literally, they are some form of bottleneck in their company. So I would love to know, how do you actually get to that point where you can take that time off? What do you need inside your company to have that peace of mind that you're not going to, the whole building's not going to burn down when you leave, because I'm sure that wasn't right away. It wasn't first year.
But I give a simple little correlation to maybe answer that is that all the general managers for all the clubs report to me, and so my job is to train them, to teach them really how to operate and run their club. But they know that they're running their club. It's not like I'm not so much the boss as I am there to help them succeed. It's their club. They're the captain of their ship. They're steering the boat, right? We can't both be steering the boat. We're going to crash the boat, right? So they're in charge. And so I really try to help them be able to completely do the job, and they don't need to report to me or to my partners or anybody else, because they're set up to succeed. And if I do that correctly, then I should be able to take off whatever time that I want to and do whatever I need to do as part of that. But a lot of people, it's so hard for them to get out of the way. I want to push authority and responsibility to the closest it can be to the member experience. I don't need to have them come for me for permission on things. They should be able to make a decision and grow. They're going to screw up some things. That's okay. That's how they learn. That's how they get better. That's how they grow. I was designing clubs, 20 some years ago, and I didn't know anything. My background wasn't architecture. I was literally drawing out the scale, what we were going to do and build and see. I screwed up a whole mess of stuff, but it's my mistakes and learning from that's helped me get better. I don't make those mistakes anymore because I've learned through all that. And if I wouldn't have made some of those failures, I wouldn't have done some of that, we wouldn't have seen what the product is now. And our product is constantly evolving and constantly getting better, but you have to be willing to trust your team and let them do their job. I mean, I've gone 2 weeks in Europe and I've gotten 0 phone calls, so that means that I'm doing a good job. If I'm getting a phone call, and I think people feel like that's like, look how important I am. Look, I got 47 phone calls today, and I get my share of 87,000 text messages and just like emails and all that stuff. But I mean, it's not like I have to be there to do all those things. I'm there to help them succeed. Mm-hmm. That's I think my job as a leader is to here's where we're going, here's what we're doing, and then they figure out exactly how we kind of get there. And again, I'm there to help them and not so much getting to boss them or, hey, what do you think about this? Single thing that they have to run it past me, as part of that. They're empowered to do their job. And I think if you do that as a leader, you have to have a lot of trust in your team, and that's sometimes tough. And we have 8 clubs that are very different, and having that flexibility it would be way easier for me as a manager in my role if I had 8 clubs that were exactly the same with 8 managers that were very similar. And here's the book of exactly how to do this. But we operate by saying things like, we have guidelines, not rules. You should use common sense and good judgment, and you should come up with the best solution for that situation, right? I mean, those are things that we want them to do. With that, they have all the information. They're smart people. They can make good decisions. And if you have a good team of people and you let them do their job as a leader, you should have the time to be able to do things that you want to do. And they should be pushing that down to their team. As a GM, they should be pushing it to their department managers so that they feel the same way. And that goes back to the department managers should make sure that the frontline staff is feeling empowered to do the right thing in each of these situations. And if we're all doing that collectively as a company, we're making the member experience awesome. We feel good as employees working there. And because of that, the business takes care of itself. And so those are things that I think are important. But a lot of leaders, a lot of entrepreneurs can't get out of their own ego to some extent of feeling like they're so important that they have to constantly be making every single decision for every single person that's on their team. And I think that's where it becomes detrimental, and that's where you burn yourself out. I look at scalability. In order for us to go from one club, which we did since I've been here, to 8 clubs, we had to be able to design processes and systems that allowed us to scale. That I can't be at 8 clubs at the same time to do things. And so in order for us to go to 10 clubs or to 15 clubs or to 20 clubs or wherever we end up going to, we have to keep putting things in place that allows us to scale the business, that makes it less dependent upon me or pick the person that's here at WAC. It's got to be more on us creating the right processes, the right systems, the right things to be able to do that, as part of it. But yet, that's easy with like a widget, right? If you're McDonald's and you're just making a hamburger, you can systematize that pretty simple, right? But how do you keep the customer service so that it's still connectability is there, that the feeling is still there as it relates to that? And so it's a different way but you still have to apply the same premise. Like, how do we allow that and push that down? And how do we teach all of our frontline staff to make good decisions and to do that? But where we do that is that we really teach our philosophy. If people understand and know our philosophy from a frontline person all the way up, then it's relatively easy for them to make those decisions. I mean, I'm sure you probably still remember what our mission statement was here at the WAC. Yeah, it's been a few years, but you probably know what it was.
We make a difference in people's lives.
There you go, right?
Oh my gosh, it's so ingrained. It's like no, and I feel like that's spot on. So like the really interesting part about like this podcast is like I lived in this culture. So like you're not just saying this. I remember exact experiences. And I didn't even realize, I mean, obviously this came from you and it trickled down at other things. I remember before there was a water class that had to get canceled like last second because like there was like a family emergency and the instructor, there's nobody could sub it. It happens. It's just like nobody can control this. And one of the people that worked at the front desk was just like, let's give all these people free drink cards. And the people were fine. They were already not upset that the thing is because they understood there's a family emergency, but because they got like these free drinks on top of it, now the company just went above and beyond to make sure that the people were okay. And it was so simple. It probably cost you guys like $30 or something. But what ended up happening is that customer had a much better experience overall. And that's something that stuck with me and like really makes sense with everything that you're talking about, is that if you focus like very intently on the customer experience and just making that the number one priority, like everything else starts to take care of itself. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, no, you are correct. I mean, that's all about the member experience, and so when we are out there talking to our staff, that's all you've heard us say that a million times. We really pay attention to that. And just little things, like all the little things matter more than anything as relates to how business operates, how people feel about a business. Like you said, just a little thing that we can do, like giving somebody a card or making something right. I mean, I hate to say it this way, but if you go anywhere often enough, something that's not perfect will happen, right? It's how they respond to it. It's not like we were trying to do something negative or weren't paying attention to it. But if we even just acknowledge it or apologize about it or do something about it, people know that and they trust us that we're going to make it right. And that's really what we're going to do. I mean, and that's our goal. I mean, if something's not right, we'll make it right. We're going to get it right. We're going to fix it. And I think people feel that, whether it's an employee or whether it's a member, is part of that. They feel that that's what's going to happen, not just, again, words on a wall. That's the reality of it. But I think the secret sauce for businesses is that in order to create the customer, or in our case, the member experience, to make that right, you have to start by building the best staff experience. And so we really spend a lot of time making sure that we're creating a positive staff experience or a team member experience for us as part of that. So I mean, how we onboard somebody, it's not just like, hey, here you go work the front desk. There's a whole training process for that. You've been to things like Club 101. There's a whole way that we try to teach and develop people as part of that to make sure that our team members feel that way. You showed off one of the awards that you got. I mean, all the little things we do to make people feel that way that work for us. If they feel that way, they're going to then make our members feel that way. And so we have to teach all of our people so that they can then do that. And an analogy we always say is that if we take care of our team members are going to take care of our members, and our members take care of our business. And so that is the philosophy as part of that. I mean, and again, all of us are here for the member. If the member, without members, none of us have jobs, right? So we recognize that. And you probably remember our kind of our flow chart. On the top of our flow chart, we have members. I mean, it's not the owners. It's obviously members are on the top. We're on the bottom. We've literally put ourselves, we're on the very bottom, because what our job is to support the business. It's not there to be, we're on top and we're here in some office to just make some decisions. We're here to support the managers who are there to support their department managers who are there to support the team leads and managers on duties. And then obviously those people support our frontline staff, who then supports our members. So I mean, it's just, that's what holds up our business and allows it to be successful.
I mean, like I got a lot out of this. I have way more questions. I think we got to maybe 3 just because I had so many other questions. We'll definitely have to do this at another point in the future, as my kids are screaming in the background. But I honestly, sincerely want to say thank you for doing this. I did get a lot out of it. I have like a page of notes, and I can't stop my kids from screaming. But I'm going to apply this in my own business. And I hope people take away some very like fundamental things. Like success is not like, it doesn't have to be up to chance. You are in complete control of your actions, your attitude, and what you do. If you want to see that success, it just goes into having that clarity of like, what does the best person in this role look like? Like if you are an entrepreneur, what does the best person in the role of entrepreneur look like? If you're the best person working at a front desk, what does that best look like? And as you do that, these things get recognized in the right environment. So as long as you're surrounded by the right people, the growth will happen, the success will come. And it's not up to chance. So
just to stay on that point for 1 second is when you do have that picture of like what that best person is, just realize that every day you're getting feedback. Are you getting closer or further away? You asked the question, like, how do you know, like, as you get less appreciation as you move up? Well, because now you know where you're going, right? If I have like a map and here's where my destination is, if I look and I'm like, oh, now I can look on my phone, right? I'm 10 minutes closer to where I'm headed, right? I know I'm going the right direction, right? I get that feedback constantly to myself. It's when I'm not sure where I'm ended up. I'm like, am I going the right way or not? Well, if you don't know the destination, it's hard to know if you're headed in the right direction. And so I can constantly give myself continual feedback saying we're headed in the right direction because we're getting close to our goal, right? And a lot of people just don't have that. They're waiting for somebody else to provide them with that picture, right? That here's where you're headed towards. And I can never, when I was growing up and going through the ranks, the people that were my boss, I couldn't get in their head and know if they felt I was doing a good job or not. And so, but I could go into my head and say, hey, am I doing what I should be doing? Am I holding myself accountable to doing the things that I should be doing every day? And that's what made me better. I wasn't waiting for somebody to yell at me for doing something right or wrong. I was able to hold myself accountable to doing the things that I needed to do every day. In anything in life, there's only a few things that you have to do to be successful, but you got to do them every single day. You got to hold yourself accountable to doing them. Most people do not. And that's why they don't see the success that they don't. And I think the other point that you touched on is that I told a lot of people this, is that you have to be the CEO of your own life. I mean, you have to take control. It's your life. You determine it. And success is not a limited piece of pie, right? Like if I get more of it, you get less of it. We can all have the same amount, or we could have more, or it's not proprietary towards one another's, piece or part of it. So I think we have to just realize that is that, we're all capable of having more success. But we live in a world a little bit right now where success is almost frowned upon in a lot of ways. And I think that can be destructive. So hopefully that changes, that people realize that being successful and working hard and doing all those things, there is some real positive results, not just sometimes the negative results that people kind of hear with being burnt out and in other things that are negative. But
absolutely. And once again, thank you so much for doing this. If people want to connect with you or are now amped up to go work at the WAC, where can they connect with you? What's the best way to just find out more about the WAC and what you do?
Yeah, well, the best way to find more about the WAC is if you're local, just to go into any one of the WACs, and experience it for yourself. I mean, you can look on our website. It's www.thewac.com. But again, I think, we can say all kinds of great things, but the reality is you have to experience it for yourself. And, we talk about finding your fit. There's a lot of different health clubs for people. So you got to find the health club that's going to help you reach your goals. The best workout for any person is the workout they can adhere to. And I think that's what's so important, because if you do a great workout for 3 weeks and then you don't do it for the next 3 months, that doesn't help you reach your goals. Is part of that. And then personally, if you want to get a hold of me, it's just Chez, CHEZ @thewac.com. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. So thank you, Abram. I appreciate having you on here, and I wish you well.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much.